Oh noes, hellos, welcome back to another videos, and today we're taking a look at the Aetherdrift set, and I'm gonna try to do this the first time, but we're going to do a set review on the cards I think will be good for Arena Pauper. So let's get into it, and right off the bat we start off with a colorless 3 mana creature, Aether Jacket. It's Flying Vigilance, and you can sacrifice this creature to destroy another target artifact. Active only as a sorcery. It's probably not great. Um, this card just seems kind of too easy to like say or put in a Flyers deck, but no, it's just not there, and I feel like it's probably not going to see play. So unfortunate. But next up we have, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Alers Alasirian Jaguar. So it's a 4 mana green cat mount. Saddle 1, 4/4. It has vigilance, and whenever this creature attacks while saddle, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Not particularly great. I've noticed that most of the cards on this list have vigilance, which is kind of cool, but I don't think this card will see play. I think saddle's kind of way too, like, it's like a fixed version of crew, because you can only do it at sorcery speed, so it's probably not going to see any play outside of maybe just draft. But next up we have a Vishkar Raceway. Now this is an interesting card I actually took a look at. It's a land with start your engines. Now if you don't know what to start your engines, if you have no speed, it starts at 1 and you can increase it when an opponent loses life. And the max speed is 4. It adds a colorless, which is cool, and max speed for 3, you discard a card to draw a card. Now you may be thinking, it is kind of underwhelming, and that ability is really hard to get online. What I kind of saw this card, I was like, it's probably not going to be good. But then when I kind of looked more into it, I was like, you know, Burn, more specifically Madness Burn, might like this card. And maybe you could play it as a one-of just to kind of test it. But having a repeatable way to discard a card from a land to draw a card is really good sometimes if you're top decking. And it's not like a dead card in your deck. It still adds mana, and you have that discard outlet once you deal enough damage to your opponent. So it could see some play, maybe a Madness Burn, but I'm not too sure. It probably still seems a little clunky. I will test it though, and we'll see where it goes. But so far, I kind of like this card. I think people are overlooking it, but overall, not a bad card. Next up, we got Beast Strider Vanguard. It's a human knight, 2/2. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from among them. Put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So this is a really good Vivian's Grizzly because it can look at permanent cards. And it looks at the top 3 cards, so you get to see more cards overall. I think this is great. I don't think it will see play in this format specifically. Maybe elves might like it, but more about Paper Pauper and stuff will probably like this card, but it might not be for us. I think Vivian's Grizzly does, decent already. But the low mana cost, even if the activated ability is high, is really good on a creature like this. So we'll have to see where this goes. It looks pretty solid. Next up, we have Bestow Greatness for 2 and a green. It's an instant. Target creature gets +4/+4 and gains trample until end of turn. Now, I'm going to hope in this video I'm not going over reprints because this looks like a reprint, but yeah, this card isn't really great. The only pump spells we ever even use sometimes is like Snakeskin Veil, if you can even call it a pump spell. Most of the times it just saves your creatures. So we're not looking forward to any of these cards. And these both are obviously reprints, so I will not be going over those. And let's go over this one. It's a bounce off for 1 blue in an instant, and return target creature or vehicle to its owner's hand. So this is basically a buffed version of Unsummon, and I gotta say it's pretty good because you can bounce vehicles. And even though that might not seem relevant now, maybe in the future if we get more busted vehicles at common, it could see some play maybe. And Unsummon is not a card you usually see in like Pauper anyways, But it's nice to have something like this because, you know, redundancy could be a thing because now you can run unsummon in this card, so we'll see where that goes. Next up, it's Brightfield Glider for 1 white. It's a possum mount. It's cute. It's a 1/1 vigilance. See, talking about the vigilance. Whenever this creature attacks while saddle, it gets +1/+2 and gains flying until end of turn. Saddle 3. So I was thinking maybe, you know, Flyers might like this, but at first glance it doesn't seem that great. But maybe in, you know, some mono white weenie decks, it could be a nice finisher. I mean, it does have vigilance and it does give that nice buff, but it's pretty mid nevertheless. It's a card maybe that can probably see play, but it's just not overall doing anything special that, you know, just one white flyer can't do for, you know, a little bit better of an effect, but who knows? I mean, it could be good in the right hands of someone. Next up, we got Brightfield Mustang for 3 and a white. It's a horse mount, 3/3. Whenever this creature attacks while saddle, untap it and put a +1/+1 counter on it, and you can saddle for 1. So it's not bad. It's not great. It doesn't really do anything like specifically interesting. It's just kind of a solid like white creature card, so I don't think this will see play, honestly, though. Next up, we got Broadcast Rambler. So 4 white and a vehicle. This is, I think, the first time we're seeing vehicles now. So this is the first one, and when this vehicle enters, you create a 1/1 colorless after artifact creature token with flying. You can crew for 1. So this is also not a really good card, like I was saying about the other one. I think, you know, it's decent, you know, not a white creature, but a vehicle, maybe in draft, but not here. I don't think we'll ever look for that card. This is a reprint. This doesn't see a lot of play, so let's go to Burner Rocket. This guy looks like my type of dude. It's being a Goblins deck, but unfortunately it's not a Goblin. He's just the one driving it. So it's a Burner Rocket artifact vehicle. Has flash. Crew 1/3/1. And when this creature enters, target creature you control gets +2/+0 and gains trample until in third. So, not great. It is basically like, kind of like an ambush effect. I don't think you'll see play. It's very clunky, and there's just way better stuff you could do with your mana to pump power. So, unfortunate. Next up is Camera Launcher. It's an artifact creature construct 2/2. It has exhaust, so this is another new mechanic in the set. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and then you create a 1/1 color stop their creature token with flying. So kind of the same as the last card we saw, like some cards ago, before it. It's not interesting though. It is a colorless creature. I will give it that, but it's definitely not something we're looking for here. But next up we have, I might pronounce these wrong. I'm really sorry. Cheatin Gravestalker. It's an insect warrior. It's 5/4 for 6 mana, but the spell costs 1 less to cast for each artifact or creature card in your graveyard. It has cycling too. So actually a pretty decent card, I would say. I know Withering Necromass doesn't really see a lot of play in our format, but this might push it because now we have 8 Necromass type effects. I also know we have that weird Monstrosity Snake card, but, you know, this could probably push that deck to something, but we'll see. I think it's still pretty mid, but we'll have to see who's going to make that deck. I don't know. So this is Clamorous Ironclad, artifact vehicle, has Menace Crew 3, and cycling. So honestly, it's pretty just good for the cycling. I don't think I would ever play this card as its vehicle. I could see this maybe in Cycle Storm, but I don't know. I mean, having the 1 red, I mean, not a lot of cards that do that for 1 red. Usually the cycling's going up now, but, you know, pretty decent card, but not what we're looking for. Next up is Collision Course. It's a sorcery, and Collision Course will deal X damage to our creature, where X is the number of permanents you control that are creatures or vehicles, and destroy target artifact. So, kind of like the one card we used to play. I forget what it's called, but it also destroyed walls. Eh, it's not great, but it's not terrible. I mean, it is a removal spell and an artifact destruction, which we don't really see a lot from white. So having it on this could be useful, but I really don't see it. You could just run Revoke Existence or whatever. Thraben Charm, of course, is always going to be the GOAT, but, you know, still a pretty neat card for what it is. Next we have Crash and Burn, which for 3 and a red and an instant, choose one, destroy target vehicle, or deal 6 damage to target creature, which is the only one we're going to see in Arena Pauper, so Planeswalker is kind of irrelevant in this case. It is not a good card. I think a Braid is a little bit better, and I guess the modality of doing 6 damage at the sacrifice of paying maybe 2 extra mana is not worth it in most cases. I think you want to go on curve and just run a Braid. Still half of that damage, but still be decent, like, removal spell. On top of it, it could destroy artifacts, but this can only destroy vehicles, so kind of a bummer that it didn't say artifacts. Maybe would have saw a little bit of play, but it's not what we're looking for as well. Next up, we have Daring Mechanic, which is a creature human artificer 3/3, and you can pay 3 in white, put a +1/+1 counter on target mount or vehicle. So, yeah, this card's not that great. I do like the reference though. It kind of looks like the engineer from TF2, if you know what I'm saying. But other than that, it doesn't look that great. Next up, Deathless Pilot. Now this is kind of an interesting card. I kind of kept my, eyes on. It is a zombie. You know me, I like my zombies. So it's a 1-black zombie pilot 2/2, and this creature saddles and mounts and cruise vehicles so it's the special, pilot thing for 2 or greater. And then you return this card from your graveyard to your hand. Now, the reason why I kind of like this card is because of the return this card from your graveyard to your hand. I've been running a zombie mill deck, running the Undead Butler. And sometimes I get drawbads where sometimes I can't return multiple zombies. And I've been running out of gas recently with that deck to have zombies in my hand sometimes. Having this is really nice because I can actually get some zombies out of this. And maybe run some. If there's any saddles in the future that are like zombie, I could probably make a Pauper deck with zombies. But I mean, other than that, it seems pretty mid. I don't think I would play this card actually, but I do like the this part of the card the most. So I don't know. We'll see. That is a reprint, so I will not be taking a look at that one, but I will be taking a look at this one because this also caught my eye. Dynamite Diver. It's a Goblin Violent 1/1, and it has that clause with the 2 or greater. But when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. It seems kind of good. It's not great. There really isn't a pseudo goblins deck. I will say the closest we are is Kadoltha Burn, but I don't think Kadoltha Burn would play this. They'd rather just play some value goblin that's way better at attacking, one with haste preferably, but who knows. I mean, having it deal 1 damage to something can kill off a bunch of stuff if you think about it, especially any of those Soul Sisters, but other than that, it's not that great. I don't think it will see play at all, but who knows. Next up, it's Endrider Catalyzer. That is a rhyme and a half. It's a human warrior with start your engines, and the max speed you can get 2 red mana. So not great, not terrible. It is not something we're looking for. When I read max speed in the start your engines thing, I thought it was every turn you get speed, but unfortunately, it's when the opponent loses life, so it's not great. I was thinking maybe it could probably see play in Chatterstorm, but having the max speed clause, really hard to get that done. So probably not going to see play. Next up is Engine Rat for 1 and a black. It's a 1/1 zombie rat and it has Death Touch and each opponent loses 2 life. So it's a zombie, cool. But it has nothing going for it besides just the activate ability and the Death Touch. So probably not a good card, but it is a zombie, so I'll give it that. Next up we have Flood the Engine, which is an enchantment error for 2 and a blue, and enchant creature or vehicle. And when this enters, tap enchanted permanent, and enchanted permanent loses all abilities and doesn't untap. So, yeah, it's not great. There's other ways to tap down stuff for cheaper, like bind the monsters. Heck, even that subjugation card or even bubble snare is better. So this card pretty much seems unplayable. Probably won't see play in our format. Next up is Gastel Blockbuster. So it's a creature human berserk for 2 and a red. And when this creature enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature or vehicle. When you do, destroy target artifact and opponent controls. So this kind of is something. It has something going for it. I mean, sacrificing a vehicle and not an artifact, kind of a miss, because this would have been a lot better if you could sacrifice an artifact, because you can get some draw advantage from the many eggs in Pauper, like Synth and Acre Wellspring. Unfortunately, you can't even destroy your own artifact because it says opponent controls. So it's pretty useless. And would you say, like, maybe it's a sideboard card? Probably not. It's not great. And I wish it just had more potential, because they've really missed the mark on vehicles. Really did. They just should have just said artifact, you know? That would have made it a little bit better, but unfortunately it's not great. That's a reprint, and it's a pretty solid card, so not much to say about that. Next up is Gilded Goda. It's a creature horse mount for 1 and a red, 2/2, so it's a grizzly bear. When this creature attacks while saddled, create a treasure token. As a cheap saddle as well. Yeah. I don't know, pretty mid. Other than that, it's just kind of okay. It's not great though. It probably won't see play, but there's some appeal to it, I guess. Next up is Glitch Ghost Surveyor for 2 and a blue. It's a Spirit Scout with flying. And start your engines. And the max speed, you can exile this card from your graveyard, draw a card. So this is probably not good. Spirit is kind of a relevant creature type, but it doesn't really see a lot of play in Arena Pauper, unfortunately. But if it did, I mean, it would kind of be cool. But unfortunately, just having that clause is kind of backbreaking. Alright, next up is 2 and a red for a Goblin Scout. Trample. It's a 3/2. And it kind of has the same clause as the other one. Yeah, so it's basically kind of like, I like to say it's kind of like a reprint of a reprint card we already have in this set. But it's a Goblin. So I don't know if each of the, what's it called? Like evergreen tribal types are going to have each of these. So like, I'm assuming the black one will be a zombie. I don't know. The white one might be a soldier. Or no, that'd be a human, wouldn't it? I don't know. But like anyways, these cards aren't really useless outside of that. Now here's something we kind of kept our eyes on, like the whole Discord in this. So this is Grim Bauble. It's an artifact. 1 black, pretty simple. When this enters, target creature and opponent controls get -2/-2 until end of turn. And if you don't want it, you can pay 2 and a black to sacrifice the target and surveil 2. So pretty solid card, actually. The thing I'm kind of concerned about is whether or not it's really good, because yeah, I can see the appeal of being able to bounce it with Core Skyfisher, but that's pretty much it. And not only can it not kill like the bigger creatures in the format, but it can't really deal with anything else that is a threat, like say Withering Chrysalis or any of those cards. So while I do think it's a neat card, I I think people are more overhyped than they should be because that's pretty much all it does. And I do see the appeal, like you can get it on curve sometimes and it's just really great. And then maybe if it had flash, it would be a really good card. But other than that, it's basically a stab, or whatever the type of effects are called. And it's not something that is really good in most circumstances, even if you're bouncing it for value. I would just think it's an okay card, and we'll see where it goes, but for comments looking at $110, it's looking at $1.10, so I mean, who knows, it could be good, but we'll just have to see. Next up is Grim Javelier. It's a human warrior, 3/2. And whenever you attack, so it even says whenever you attack. It doesn't say this has to attack. It says whenever you attack. Target attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and when it dies, when that creature dies, surveil 1. So it's not a really good card. I wish it was like a zombie. That would be cool. Okay, I'm gonna stop with the zombies thing. But yeah, I mean, it's not great. Maybe in a draft it could be good, but it's not something we are here to see. I mean, there is some cards that buff power on a creature already, and this ain't it, Chief. Now here's another interesting one that I kind of kept my eye on. I don't know if anyone else did too, but it's a 2-mana artifact guy-like matrix. I like the name. Sounds like the matrix. When this artifact enters, draw a card. And you pay 2, target mount you control becomes saddled till end of turn. You only activate as a sorcery, because, yeah. Oh, but then target vehicle you control becomes an artifact creature till end of turn. No sorcery, because they know vehicles are, yeah. So, the main thing we're looking for is this clause. Anything else kind of, you know, I guess if you do have a mount, it's okay. But other than that, it's a pretty neat card because it's like one of those eggs that draws a card. However, it ain't no Ichor Wellspring, but it is kind of something, you know. Having artifacts that draw cards can lead to some interesting in-game stuffs. Of course, Skyfish I'm talking about more or less, but yeah, just kind of a card to keep your eye on. Maybe we'll get some better mounts and vehicles, but we'll see. Next up is Guidelight Optimizer. It's an artifact creature robot 2/1, and you can add blue to spend this mana to only cast artifact spells or activate abilities. So we already have cards like this. They're not great, so this one's probably even worse because it's an artifact creature, easier to kill, so yeah. Next up is Hazard of the Dunes. Just 3 and a green for a trample reach creature. 6 and a green. Put 3 1/1 counters on this creature. So, yeah, it's just a big beater. That's pretty much it. I mean, you could run it in mono green, but other than that, it's not great. Pretty mid. All right, next up we have Howler's Heavy for 3 and a blue, and Cycling's back in the set, so that's kind of cool. And when you cycle this card, target creature or vehicle an opponent controls gets -3/-0 until end of turn. So, yeah, I love the artwork on it, but other than that, it's not a really good card. Although cycling's never really dead. It's not really a dead mechanic. It's a pretty solid mechanic. We'll see. Next up, we got Hole Drifter, not to be confused by Mole Drifter. It's an artifact vehicle flying. And obviously, when it enters, you draw 2 cards. So, it's Mole Drifter in a vehicle form. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the same power as Mole Drifter, but it is a vehicle that can draw you 2 cards. And I guess it does dodge sorcery speed removal, but other than that, it just seems pretty mid. I don't think I would play it. It does seem appealing to any of your Mole Drifter fans out there, but yeah, I think you just stick with Mole Drifter. Next up, we have Interface Ace. Man, some of these rhyme. It's an artifact creature, pilot robot 0/4. I wish I had Defender. This creature saddles with mounts and cruise vehicles using toughness rather than power. That's kind of cool. And whenever this creature becomes tapped during your turn, untap it. It only triggers once. So, yeah, it's a pretty dead card. It's just a block cow at the end of the day, so not something we want to see. Next up, we have a 2-mana 3/2. Pretty much it. So, actually, here's the crazy thing. And I know people are going to be like, well, it's a 3/2 for 2 mana. But that's pretty much all it is. Here's the crazy thing, right? It's not even a good card. But it's a 3/2 for 2 mana. You really can't complain. And I don't know if this is going to be the norm of green cards now. Like, Grizzly Bears are just totally, like, dead at this point. But, I mean, it's a 3 for 2 mana, so you can't really complain. I mean, it's just not a good card overall. I think if you're spending 2 mana, you want it to do something. And this just isn't, you know, the type of card you'd probably play in a Pauper deck, unfortunately. Next up is Keen Buccaneer. It's an octopus pirate. Ooh, I like that. Reminds me of Pirates of the Caribbean. If you know that the movie. It has vigilance because I guess every creature in this freaking set has vigilance. Even apparently blue creatures too, but blue creatures always had vigilance, just here or there. 1 blue for exhaust. You draw a card and discard a card. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Yeah, I mean, what the card says and what it does, it's not really good. So, you do draw a card. You kind of loot, but is it loot or rummage? Either one, but it's still not good. Okay, I looked at this card. I thought, oh, it's so good. Like, why wouldn't this be like a card I would put in? But let's talk about the card first. It's a 1 in a red enchantment. Would start your engines, and when it enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. And when it has max speed, you sacrifice this to give creatures and vehicles you control haste. So, yeah. I'm reading this card now. It's not great. I think is it called Bitter Reunion? Something like that. Does the same thing. You have to pay 1 extra mana to get that effect. But I was thinking Mardu Zealot. But unfortunately, that max speed clause really hard to accomplish in a deck like that, so probably not going to see play, unfortunately. Next up is Leonin Surveyor. It's a cast scout with start your engines, and during your turn, this creature has first strike, because, you know, power reasons. And then it has the same clause where you exile this to draw a card. So I guess they went with cats as the cycle of these cards, which isn't, you know, terrible. And there's not really any. I wish it was humans. Might have been a little bit better, but overall, pretty mid. Not something. That's a reprint. Now this. Oh man. I love. Okay, I am a sucker for like pump effects sometimes in white, and I don't know why. And I think Sunny Veil kind of got me hooked on the whole birds deck. But having something like this, so Light Peeled Cherry for 1 white and an instant, just +2/+2 until end of turn. But you could cycle it for 2. It's not terrible sometimes. I mean, don't get me wrong, it ain't no, what is it? There's so many effects now where you untap, it gives +1/+3. I think that's way better. It dodges more removal. But having something to pump maybe is okay, and cycling it isn't actually a terrible deal. I don't know, maybe I'm too overhyped about the whole pump mechanics in white, but I don't know, something like this kind of seems kind of cool. But I ain't no, like, sucker to say, you know, people are probably going to shit on my take like this, but I think this is a decent card. I might put it in flyers, but I don't know. Hey, it has a bird on it, for God's sakes. So, like, I don't know. It just seems kind of mid at the end of the day. I'd rather run the untapped ones, because those are combat tricks and you could dodge removal. So, who knows? This is another cool card that I saw as well. This is Light Wheel Enchantments, but it's an enchantment. Don't worry, guys, it's not an artifact. You can enchant a creature or vehicle. It has to start your engines. An enchanted permanent gets +1/+1. It has vigilance, and when you have max speed, you can cast it from your graveyard. Now, here's the cool thing about this card that I actually kind of overlooked. You can cast it as many times as long as you have max speed. So the crazy thing about this card is, I mean, Sentinel's Eyes is really good on curve. Don't get me wrong. But this card has potential just to be kind of like maybe a 5th or 6th copy of one of those effects. And I think in this format, it's kind of important, especially in Bogles. You kind of want to have some back for protection if they're going to go for a big swing. So having vigilance on a creature is really, really important. Now, here's the other thing, too. It doesn't have a... So I can see an argument maybe you don't put it in because that deck's already running Malevolent Rumble. But the cool thing about this card is that you can also put it in Mono White Heroic, which is kind of like Bogles, but without it being kind of, you know, tied to an expert creature, and it's maybe a tad bit slower and maybe a tad bit like color intensive. So we'll have to see where this goes. It's a pretty solid card, and I would probably put it maybe in Heroic and not put it in Bogles, but you know, it's still up in the air. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're back. Alright, this is a Lotus Guard Disciple. It's a bird, so it might be interesting. Flying, and when this creature enters, target creature vehicle gains lifelink and indestructible until end of turn. I wish it had Flash. That's all I have to say about that card. If it had Flash, I'd probably play it in my birds deck, but unfortunately, it's pretty underwhelming. So, yeah, sorry bird, but you're not going to cut it for my deck. Alright, so this is the cycle, the green cycle but this is for an elephant. And it has no other special. I wish it had trample maybe on it. And yeah, it's the same thing as the other cycle of cards that exiled this card from your graveyard to draw a card. It's pretty, actually, it's probably the worst one because it doesn't have an ability, so yeah. Now, I think the moment you guys are all been waiting for. What is the most powerful card in the set of Aetherdrift? And let me tell you, I think it might be this one. So it is Magmakin Artillerius I can't speak today. Whatever. The guy who does the artillery. Alright. So it's an elemental pirate. Whenever you discard one or more cards, this creature deals that much damage to each opponent. It, of course, has cycling for 1 in a red, and when you cycle this card, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Now, this is going to seem crazy, and I don't know if anyone else is on board with this, but this card might be undoubtedly the most powerful card we ever had in a standard set for Pauper for quite some time. Now, I think a lot of people are going to say cap and say, well, what about Deadly Dispute? What about Synth? What about, I'm saying like creature cards. I'm not saying like just like artifact or anything. So I'm saying like we had it a while too. So most of the time for the recent standard sets, they've been kind of underwhelming for Pauper. Now I'm not saying there wasn't any broken creatures. But this one is kind of like the brood scale situation, where it has just so much combo potential. Now, I have some ideas even in Arena Pauper, if that might sound crazy to you. But the thing actually that's kind of interesting about this card is that it says discard. And it doesn't say cycle, it doesn't say anything else, right? So, what you can do, outside of paper, there of course is a combo I have in mind. I actually have 3 combos in mind for paper. But an interesting thing I actually have in mind for this card specifically is probably Treasure Hunt. So it's kind of janky, but in a sense, you can get this Treasure Hunt with a bunch of lands and whatever, and it would be like a huge deck. I would be, whew, we're talking maybe like you probably want to run average, maybe like it'd be really hard too because you got to get the red mana. So I don't know. I guess you can accomplish that with with double face cards. But be that as it may, Treasure Hunt and you have a bunch of cards in your hand. Guess what happens when you end the turn? Discard that all those cards and you deal that much damage. So that's the combo I was talking about. But yeah, other than that, so maybe I can also see a world where this could be good, maybe, in a cycling deck. But I actually have a lot of ideas what I want to do for Arena Pauper for this card that I haven't talked about yet. And I might make a whole like thread about like what I could do with this card. And this might be the most powerful creature card we've had in a while for Pauper, at least. So this card is very on my radar, and I'm picking it for the best card in the set. So keep your eye on this card. I'm gonna try to make some combos out of this. We're gonna see where it goes. So we have another basically this is kind of stupid to say, but this is kind of another Zealot card. It says Maximum Overdrive. Put a +1/+1 counter target creature gains death touch and indestructible until end of turn. The cool thing about this card is that it does give indestructible. I will give it that. And like for the most part, I think having that as a way to save your Zealot is kind of cool. But it's mid nevertheless. I wouldn't run it, but maybe there's someone out there that may, oh, Zealot, you know, death touch, you know? Any death touch effect, you use your Zealot. But anyways, it's pretty mid. Next up is Midnight Mangler. It's a 1 blue artifact vehicle. During turns other than yours, this vehicle is an artifact creature. And crew 2. I don't know what to think about this card. I don't think it's good, but it does seem appealing. That's all I have to say about that. Next up is Migrating Ketrodon. It's a dinosaur with reach, and when it enters, you gain 4 life, and you can cycle it. Yeah, we already have stuff like this that gains life. I think this might be a little bit too slow. There are other cards that there's even that is a giant that you can bargain, and you can kind of get the same effect with 1 less life, but you get to sacrifice an artifact. So I think that one's better, and I think this one's out. Next up, we have Mutant Surveyor. It's a mutant scout. Let's start your engine. Oh, it's okay. It's the black. It's the black. Wait, but why is this a scout? Shouldn't this be a zombie? Oh, they kind of missed the mark on that. But yeah, I mean, I guess this one's a little bit better because it has a pump effect. Man, but the cycle's kind of all over the place. I wish it had like some kind of flavor to it, but it just seems like the last part is kind of the cycle. Like the last ability is what makes the cycle. So yeah, it's not a good card though. So next up we have Night Market to land. And it's a choose a color land, of course, with the chosen color, but it does have cycling 3. It's not a great card though. It's obviously, yeah, it's just to fix her mana. It's not good. I don't think it would see play. Next up is Nimblethopterus for 3 and a blue. It's a Vidalcan Artificer. And when it enters, you create a 1/1 color Thopter creature token flat. I think I've seen this effect before. I hope this is the cycle. But yeah, pretty underwhelming. Alright, next up is kind of a card I also had my eye on. It's an artifact creature, toy, 3/4. And when this creature or another artifact you control enters, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it's kind of like those effects with the whatchamacallit's name, but it has the same effect as those cards. I could probably see a deck like that, but it being 4 mana is kind of a tough ask. You probably have to run a bunch of treasures and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's still pretty solid. It having 4 toughness is kind of important. It being an artifact is also kind of important. So I don't know. It could see play, but we'll just have to see. It's 4 mana is kind of rough though. Next up, we have Pedal to the Metal. Look at that goblin. Oh, look at that cat. That cat's. This is some crazy artwork. But anyways, target creature gets +X +0 and gets first strike until end turn. Of course, you can pay the X into the red. Yeah, it's not that great. It's actually pretty bad. Next up, we have Pothole Mole. It's a mole creature, and when this creature enters, you mill 3 cards, and you may return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is kind of like the farmer, the eccentric farmer. So it's kind of like this, basically a functional reprint, I think. And that card doesn't see play anymore. I actually used to play it in a deck that was kind of wild back in the day, but it was basically like life drain with lands. So not great though. Next up is Powcatcher Specialist. It's Goblin Warrior with haste, 2/1. It has exhaust, and you put counters on it for 3 and a red. Yeah, not good. It's a goblin, but it's an expensive goblin, so probably wouldn't see play. Ride's End for 4 and a white instant. This spell costs 3 less to cast if it targets a tapped permanent, and you can exile target creature or vehicle. These effects are kind of far between playable and not. In this case, probably not playable. They're just way better cards we have out there that cost less and heck even do kind of the same effect. So I don't know. This card just doesn't seem like it would be good. But I know some people kind of like this effect in Pauper. So we'll just have to see where it goes. For it being 2 mana, it's kind of okay. But it's not great. Next up, we have Ripclaw Wrangler. That's a mean looking card. So when this vehicle enters, each opponent discards a card and you can crew 2. So it's basically kind of like a discard on a vehicle. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty mid. I do like how it does have it having the effect of being a vehicle though. Because some have each opponent discards a card on a creature. But other than that, it's not great. I wouldn't play it. Next up is Risky Shortcut. It's a sorcery, draw 2 cards, each player loses 2 life. So we kind of have something like this on Arena already. At instant speed, I think, too. So this is probably not going to be in my mono black burn deck. If I were to play that again, which I don't think I'm going to play ever again. But, because there's just Madness Burn, so that's even better. So, I don't know. Just seems pretty off-putting. It being sorcery speed. It's so bad, kind of. Next up is Run Over for 1 and a green instant. And the spell costs 1 less to cast if you target a mount or a vehicle. And target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. So we have something like this, like ram throughs, I think better. But fight spells at instant speed aren't terrible. It's just, there's a lot more you gotta look for in a fight spell if you're playing it in Pauper. And it just doing a one and done isn't really great. So, probably wouldn't see play. Next up we have Scrap Compactor. It's a 1-mana artifact. You can sacrifice it to deal 3 damage to target creature. Or you can pay 6 to sacrifice it to destroy target creature or vehicle. Kind of already have something like this, and didn't see play, so this probably wouldn't see play either, unfortunately. Next up we have Silken Strength, 1 and a green. It's an aura with flash. It's kind of cool. Enchant creature or vehicle. When this aura enters, untap enchant permanent. Enchanted permanent gets +1/+2 and has reach. I like how it's a combat trick, and I'm kind of guilty of this, but I have run sideboard cards to discourage flyers. But at the end of the day, I don't think really it's great. So, I mean, you can play Bogles, maybe a sideboard, but other than that, it's just not good. Next up, we have Skybox Fairy. That's a skybox? Okay. It looks more like an ornithopter. It's flying, crew 2. It's pretty vanilla with cycling. I have nothing much to say about this card. It's just pretty generic. So, yeah, it's not that good. It's actually unplayable, I would think. Next up is Skystreak Engineer. It's flying. It's a 1/3, by the way. And exhaust for 4 and a blue. Put counters. I've been seeing these a lot. Yeah, it's not good. I mean, it's a flyer for 1, but 1 in a blue, but that's pretty much it. Is this a reprint? I don't know, but it says it's not, but it looks like one. But we're gonna read it anyways. So, Spectral Interference for 1 in a blue, instant. Counter target artifact or creature spell unless the controller pays 4. Oh, so it's like a mana drain, but only for creatures and artifacts. Actually, not terrible. I also really like the art. It could see play. I mean, the counter spells we do have in Arena Pauper aren't really hard counters, anyways. So having this is actually not terrible. I could see it. So this is basically kind of like Scatter Ray. Remembering the card right? I don't know. But it seems not terrible. I don't know. We'll have to see where this card goes. Next up, we have Spin Out, which for 1 black. Destroy target creature or vehicle. Murder. Not... It's pretty unplayable. I will give it this. It is basically a power crept murder because it can also destroy vehicles. The crazy thing about that is that black has been breaking the color buy recently and now can destroy artifacts? Get out of here. Next up we have Sports Cycle Scouter. It's artifact vehicle. And when it enters, you scry 2 and crew 1. It's actually decent, but you could just run Candy Trail. There's your answer. Yeah, it's pretty much unplayable at that point. It does have a body on it, but for Skyfisher purposes, you can just play Candy Trail. It does the same thing for 1 mana, and you don't have to use white. That's the same card. Stall Out. 1 in a blue. Sorcery. Tap target creature or vehicle. Then put 3 stun counters on it. Cycling 2. Another crazy take. I have a lot of crazy takes, by the way. I am a very spicy deck builder when it comes to this game. And I know my takes on cards are horrible, but just hear me out. These effects are really good if you know what deck they go in. So I have proliferate decks that take advantage of the stun counters. And let me tell you, it is great when it happens because I play tested the games. In having a way to stun something permanently while getting an advantage. So the only thing that you get from this is cycling too. So the other cards I run on like freeze in place or whatever give you like scry. But this gives you cycling, which could be good in some situations, but I don't know. But that deck, I'm going to try it for standard Pauper event. And I might put this card in. I don't know, because I don't know if freeze in place is still legal by the time Aetherdrift release, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't know. I'm saying if it's legal right now, but this could be a good replacement if I am gonna maybe play some. I'm playing what's it called? Cold Case or Ice Cold right now, so we'll see. Next up is Stampeding Scurryfoot. It's a 1 green, 1/1 mouse. And you pay 3 and a green to put a counter, and you create an elephant. Yeah, it's whatever. It's whatever. Next up is Starting Column. It's a 3-mana artifact. The start your engines as add 1 mana of any color, so it's a mana rock. But if you have max speed, you can sacrifice, draw 2 cards, and discard a card. So, I mean, I'm thinking like Prawl might like this. Just having a way to like have a mana rock and also sacrifice it, draw 2 cards. Pretty good maybe in Pauper Brawl. Other than that, probably won't see play anywhere else. I really do like how we are getting some Prawl love though. So, if we have another Prawl event, keep an eye out for this card. Next up is Streaking Oil Gorger. I'm sorry. I've been laughing at the gas memes, unfortunately. That's fine. Hey, start your engines, and this creature has lifelink. It's not good. I will say it's a vampire. Might have some synergy, but I haven't seen it, so yeah. Next up is Swift Wing Assailant. Ooh, it's a bird warrior. I like me some birds. Obviously has flying. Start your engine, and this creature gets +0/+1. And no, thank you. It's not that good anymore. Next up is Siphon Fuel for 4 and a black instant. Target creature gets -6/-6 until end of turn. You gain 2 life. It's kind of an underwhelming removal spell. We just have way better removal. I don't think it'll see play, unfortunately. Next up we have Thunderhead Gunner. It's a shark pirate with reach. And you can discard a card or draw a card. Activate only as a sorcery and only once each turn. It's not good. I do like the art, but other than that, eh. Next up, it's Ticket Tortoise, Artifact Creature Turtle, Defender, Halo. It's one of my favorite decks in Pauper, by the way. If you guys play Paper Pauper. When this creature enters, an opponent controls more lands than you, create a treasure token. Okay. I mean, you know what? You know what's appealing about this card that I haven't noticed? Is that usually in Defenders, if you are... Now, this is still a bad card, don't get me wrong. But if you are playing Defenders, you're going to have less lands than your opponent, usually. So, I mean, that's kind of funny that I think about it in that way. But other than that, it's pretty bad. Next up is Trip Up. It's an instant, and target I swear this is a reprint. Target non-land permanent's owner puts it on their choice on top or bottom of their library. You can cycle it. These effects aren't really that good. And I swear this is a reprint. It's maybe a new artwork, a new name, but yeah, it's not good. Next up is Veilheart Bike. It's a 2 green artifact vehicle, and when it enters, you gain 2 life, and you can add 1 mana of any color. Crew 2. So there's some situations where gaining 2 life and adding mana is kind of cool. The problem is that it's on a clunky vehicle. I will say this though. It is a mana rock for Prawl. And it does have the upside also being a vehicle that can crew for 2. So there is some kind of weird situation you can get yourself into where gaining 2 life and adding mana is kind of cool. Other than that, it's pretty mid, but I can see it in probably some Prawl. Just having mana rocks is great. Next up, we have Venom Sac Lagek. Okay. It's a lizard mount, death touch 2/1, and whenever this creature casts while it's saddled, got +0/+3 until end of turn. In saddle for 2. Yeah, it's whatever, I guess. It's not great, but, you know. Next up, we have Voyager Quick Welder. It's an artifact creature, robot artificer, and artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So, actually, this isn't actually a terrible card. And the reason why I say that is you kind of already have an effect like this. I don't think it's legal in, like, historic Pauper. It's, I think, only vintage Pauper. But these effects can be broken. And I know you could do the combo deck, the return thing, and there's a bunch of stuff to make it work, like this card too. But I think in the future, if we get more payoffs like this, we're going to have a combo deck soon. So yeah, we'll see where it goes though. Next up, we have Walking Sarcophagus for 2 colorless. It's a zombie cat. Hey, it's a zombie. With start engines and the max speed, this creature gets +1/+2. It's not terrible. It is a zombie. It's just the problem is it's very generic on how it works. And yeah, having that extra toughness is cool and all, but other than that, it's not great. Next up, we have Wreckage Wickerfolk. So it's an artifact creature scarecrow. That's fine, and when this creature enters, surveil 2. I mean, 2 mana for a surveil is kind of cool and all, but other than that, it seems pretty mid. It's not anything, you know, interesting, so. Anyways, we have Wreck Remover, because you gotta wreck your opponent and remove all their shit sometimes. Excuse my French. So it's 4 mana, artifact creature comes with 3/4. And when this creature enters or attacks, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard, you gain 1 life, and you can cycle it for 2. So, just not artifact, just graveyard hate, but it's on a kind of mid creature, so not something we'd probably play. And that's it for the Pauper cards. So let's give a warm. So we'll go over the top 3 cards I think are going to see play, and then we'll end the video off here. So I think for number 3, and this might sound crazy, and this might sound kind of like unexpected for me to say, but it's actually Light Wheel Enchantments. I think this card is great. I think having another Sentinel's Eye clone is kind of something, you know. And yeah, it's gonna be great. I'm gonna try to play it in mono white heroic, but we'll see. The next card we'll go over. This is for second. Where was it? It was crap. Oh, here it is. Infinite Raceway. I think this card Maybe this could be number 3. I don't know. But this seems kind of good, maybe in Madness. And even as a late game card, if you don't have anything going on in your aggro deck, this card, your aggro card, hey, not terrible. So I don't know. We can see this kind of being good. I'll have to test it in Madness Burn, but I'll keep an eye on this card. We'll see where it goes. Number 1, obviously, this is going to be biased. But number 1 is probably Magmakin or Taylorist. This card is just amazing for what it does. And even on its own, you may think it's kind of bad as like a combo card. But also hear me out. There's stuff like Madness Burn. There's stuff like Cycle Storm, which wouldn't be a deck in Arena Pauper, but I can make it work. There's decks that, just discard cards to their hand size, like Treacherous. But I'm saying there's more applications to this card that we're not seeing yet. And why I say this is number 1 is because this is a card that requires more look into. And people are going to say, you're crazy for thinking that, and I don't think this is the most powerful card in the set. But other people I've been hearing online, and it's been outside also, like, to be fair, also outside of Arena Pauper, just Pauper in general. But this card scales so much into experimentation, and I like cards that want you to experiment on the potential. And this card has potential up to the roof. Like, this card just seems so, like, experimental. And I love cards like that because I am the type of player that loves to experiment with cards and push them to their limits. And this card is one of them. Even more so because I like the clause of even cycling it if you don't even need it. Now, we're going to see where this card goes. Hopefully it won't be broken and it won't reprint like, I don't know, Fiddy and I to make a 2-card combo a thing. So we'll have to see. But overall, this set was kind of pretty cool. I only liked the artwork on even some of the lands. I think this is a cool looking ass land. So if you guys want to get your hands on lands from the set, I think they'll be available once the set releases. These ones are kind of cool. So, anyways, guys, that's it for the set review for Arena Pauper. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye and peace.